Okay, you guys, we'll now start with exercise 14-5 on pages 830 and 831. Here, it's a similar problem. We're still dealing with bonds, but what they want to know when this corporation issues bonds, what will be the amount of the bonds payable liability that they show at the end of year one on the balance sheet. What will be the amount of interest expense? They don't specifically say that. They say what will be the amount related to the bonds that Myriad would report on its income statement for the year ended December 31, 2016. Of course, that would be the interest expense. And then they want to know what would show up related to the bonds on the statement of cash flows. Well, to me, the easiest way to take care of one like this is to make the journal entries and then refer to the journal entries for the effect on the financial statements. So let's go through them again. You might even want to try these on the template before I do it. You don't have to make the calculations for cash proceeds this time because they give you that amount. But anyway, do as you like. I'm just going to go ahead and start through the journal entries. They say Myriad Solutions Incorporated issued 10% bonds. There's your stated or contract rate. They were dated January 1st with a face amount of $320 million. And they were issued on January 1st, 2016 for $283,294,720. The bonds mature on December 31, 2025, which is 10 years from the date of issue, 10-year term. For bonds of similar risk and maturity, the market yield is 12%, so there's your market or effective rate, and interest is paid semi-annually on June 30th and December 31st. So again, I thought we would just go through, make these 3 journal entries, and use those to help us determine the amounts for the balance sheet, income statement, and statement of cash flows. So first, on January 1st, the issuing corporation here, Myriad, the bond issuer or bond seller, would receive cash when the bonds are issued. Okay, how much cash are they going to receive? Well, it was $283,294,720. Now, these numbers are more like what you'd actually see for bonds. The reason a lot of times the corporations turn to the investing public to borrow is because the amount is so large, a bank doesn't want that kind of exposure. That's one reason they might turn to the investing public. All right, so we know we're also going to, so the bonds were issued at a discount, right? The $283 million and change is less than the $320 million. So we'll also debit discount on bonds payable. We'll come back to that one. And we'll credit bonds payable for the face amount, which was $320 million. So big it doesn't want to fit in our column there. Okay, so the discount would be equal to face amount minus the cash that they received from the bond issue. So $36,705,280. Now on June 30th, we'll debit interest expense. We'll come back to that number though. We know we're going to credit cash, and cash would be credited for our $320 million, the face amount. Interest is payable semi-annually, so it wouldn't be times the full stated rate of 10%, instead half of that, so times 0.05. So the amount of cash paid out for interest is going to be $16 million. The amount of interest expense would be equal to the carrying amount which would be face amount minus the discount, which just happens to be this number, times the market rate for 6 months. Well, the market rate for a year, 12%, for 6 months, 6%. You guys, I don't like that they always use 10 and 12. It wouldn't have to be those amounts. It's just what they're going with. So our actual interest expense is $16,997, or $997,683. The interest expense is actually more than cash paid for interest to help make up for this discount. Okay, we'll amortize the discount on bonds payable. For the difference. We get $997,683. Okay, now let's make the December 31st entry. Again, these entries weren't required on this problem, but I think they're going to help, or I know they are, in determining the amounts for the financial statements. Well, the accounts to debit and credit are exactly the same. So let's just copy those, drop them in. Okay, the cash amount's not going to change. It's $16 million again. That's how much they'll pay every 6 months. Okay, but the interest expense amount is going to change. It's going to be equal to the original carrying amount plus what was amortized on June 30th. And then we're going to multiply by the market rate or effective rate for 6 months, which is, again, 6%. So that gets you interest expense of $17,057,544. And then we'll amortize the discount for the difference. So it's equal to H14 minus the 16 million. So the amortization of our discount on December 31st is $1,057,544. How many times am I going to do this? This number, the $1,057,544, should be in the credit column. So the entry balances. It's pretty basic there. Sorry for that. As you can tell, I don't like to screw up. Anyway, that makes sense. I know you were going to debit the discount anyway. I'm not sure why I wanted to enter it in the debit column. Anyway, all right, now let's take this information and figure out the answers to 1 through 3. All right, number 1, what would be the net amount of the liability Myriad would report on its balance sheet at December 31, 2016? Well, bonds payable would be reported at their carrying amount. Okay, so the carrying amount on January 1, 2016 is the cash proceeds. Okay, so instruction 1, the carrying amount of bonds payable on 1/1/16 let's go back and look. What was it? Just copy it. Okay. Now, every time we amortize the discount, that's going to increase the carrying amount. Eventually, it will be, by the end of the 10 years, the carrying amount will be increased to $320 million, which is also the face amount. But amortization of the discount on 6/30/16. We'll add that to it. $997,683. Well, something didn't work there. Let's try again. Then we want amortization of the discount on 12/31/16. Okay, how much did we write off there? $1,057,544. So we're going to add those together, you guys. And that's going to give us the carrying amount of the bonds payable on 12/31/16. Okay, that's the amount that would be reported on the balance sheet for the bonds payable by Myriad Solutions Incorporated on December 31, 2016. And of course, you guys, that's a long-term liability because the principal payment won't be due for 9 more years at that point on 12/31/16. Okay, now instruction 2, they want to know what would be the amount related to the bonds that Myriad would report in its income statement for the year ended December 31, 2016. Well, let's go back and look at the journal entries. What's going to show up on the income statement? Well, cash, discount on bonds payable, and bonds payable all go on the balance sheet. So all we're left with is interest expense will be the only one that will affect the income statement. It'll get deducted on the income statement from revenues. So interest expense recorded on June 30th, 2016. We'll start with that. And then we also want interest expense recorded on 12/31/16. Okay, let's go back and pick it up. Interest expense recorded on June 30th, $16,997,683. See if it'll work this time. Let's just paste values in like that. And format. There we go. Alright, now let's pick up the one from the end of the year. Our interest expense there is $17,057,544. Okay, so we'll add those two together, and we'll call that our interest expense for 2016. Associated, I put associated with the bonds. It just because they had some interest expense on the bonds doesn't mean that's the only interest expense this company would have. So let's add those two together. And that'll give us interest expense associated with the bond issue here. $34,055,227. 227 used to be old sitcom. I don't know if you guys probably, before you guys remember. Wasn't that great anyway. Alright, now, so this is the amount the bonds payable would be shown at on the balance sheet. This is the amount of interest expense that would show up on the income statement associated with the bonds. Alright, now how about on the statement of cash flows? Okay, so they'd have a large cash inflow in the financing section, cash received from issuance of bonds, and that would have been the original carrying amount, or the amount of cash they received over here, the $283,294,720. So that's this amount. Okay, and then they would have had cash going out, cash paid for interest. Okay, and then the cash paid for interest of $32 million. Now, where do we get that? Well, it's the $16 million 2 times. So the cash paid for interest of $32 million would be reported as an outflow in the operating section of the statement of cash flows. You guys, interest paid is an operating activity. Only principal payments would show up as an outflow in the financing section. I hope that one makes sense. And I hope you're enjoying bonds. I think they're an interesting topic at least. If you have any questions, please be in touch. I think after working this one with me, you shouldn't have any problem with the exercise 14-5 on the Connect Plus site. Thank you.